everyone. I'm Saket Agarwal, founder and CEO of Onnivation, better known as your Israel guy. About 5 years ago, I made a 17-day trip to Israel and realized that I hit a pot of gold. Uh, India as a country is known for its scale and population, and hence we end up building a lot of consumer tech companies. Whereas what I noticed about Israel is that they are half the size of Bombay, 9 million people, and everything they create has a lot of depth. Um, the idea was, can I find the most disruptive SaaS companies in Israel that can enable the consumer tech companies in India achieve their goals faster? And hence, Onnivation came into picture, and we became one of the leaders in the Israel-India tech corridor. Today, we have invested in over 25 of the best SaaS companies in Israel and helping them scale in Asia. I'm honored to have two of the tech stalwarts from Israel who are founders of the most disruptive and innovative SaaS companies out of Israel. And I thought it'll be great to have a conversation with them on how they started their journey and how they see it solving problems for the Indian market and the global market. So welcome Ariel and David to the chat. Pleasure to have you on board.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I'll just introduce Ariel and David very quickly, and then we'll get to questions. So Ariel Assaraf is the co-founder and CEO of Coralogix. They are the leading platform for observability data. He's a veteran of the Israeli intelligence unit 8200. Did over 10 years of product and team management at the Israeli Defense Forces, and prior to that, he was integration leader at Virint. David is the founder and CEO of Anodot, one of the leading companies in the business monitoring space. Previously, he was the CTO at Get, an app-based transportation service. And prior to Get, he co-founded Cotendo, a CDN and site acceleration services provider that was acquired by Akamai, where he also served as the CTO. Guys, really honored here to have you on board. Before I delve into both our founders' journeys and learnings, I want to start with understanding a little bit about why is Israel the hub of deep tech? What are the reasons? Ariel, this question is to you, a question that I get asked a lot of times. Why Israel? If you could share what makes it one of the most interesting places for SaaS companies to be born.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question that a lot of conversations have been conducted about. So I think when you look at Israel, there are a few key things that make it more prone to get into deep tech and infrastructure. First one is that Israel is basically doesn't have any domestic market. Like you mentioned, it's half Bombay. You can't really create consumer goods in Israel. You can't create B2C products in Israel. Unless you aim for the global market to begin with. So that state of mind of building everything globally and not having any cultural advantage forces a lot of Israeli companies to go to B2B, where the advantage has to be very clear, and you have to come up with a set of criteria to show that you're superior to other products. Specifically, maybe not these days, but in the past, Israeli companies were not at the same size or had the same resources as American companies. The other very well ingrained reason inside the Israeli culture is the army service. So when you think about the most successful Israeli companies, both come from two domains. One is the entire world of anomaly detection and infrastructure monitoring, which both our companies here are related to. And the other one is cybersecurity, obviously. When you think about intelligence units that have to protect and sometimes attack with cybersecurity technologies, and also obviously have to maintain their own infrastructure, which is a huge scale, that maybe the highest scale of software in the world besides the nation state American organization. You got to have really strong infrastructure engineers. And when everything is mission critical, everything has to be 100% uptime. So then you basically grow people at the age of 18 to massive scale and infrastructure that they don't see that age at any other country in the world, and you grow them into cybersecurity defense and offense in levels that they won't see anywhere else in the world.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. One of the facts that I was attending a chat with your previous Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he said that 20% of the world's funding on cybersecurity goes to Israeli cybersecurity companies, and we're just 9 million people. So fascinating. That sets a lot of context on why. Uh, Question to you, David. I've seen in my experience, a lot of companies that Israel is solving for, a lot of problems Israel is solving for are niche problems. And Anodot is a very niche company. How did you figure out that this is the problem that you want to solve, figuring real-time insights? Is there a personal story behind it? How did you get to it?
So before I will explain that, Anodot is not really a niche company, because the things that we are solving today started as a niche player. And this is the beauty of that you start with something that is so-called or thought as a niche, but with the time, it becomes more and more popular and more, even in the future, I will say, maybe even commoditized. When we started about the concept of analyzing data in a different way, which is visualization, but to make it with machine learning and anomaly detection, at that time, almost nobody talked about anomaly detection. And seven years later, you see that almost every companies, especially the leaders, Google and in Google Analytics, AWS, I would say, mainly copy our product. And more companies that are very massive, Microsoft and so on, all of them now understand that this kind of algorithms and technique are needed. Now, if we go to the past, I will say that one of the things that when I was a CTO, I like to do is to ask myself why many times, actually 5 times. This is the Japanese method, if you know, to understand the root cause of anything that you are challenging. And when I was challenging with our business at Get, and I was looking into business incidents like drop-in rides in every countries and so on, that were detected so late with BI, I ask myself why, and then I go to the conclusion that the business data is not monitored. And why we are looking at graph where the business itself can be also monitored is exactly like you monitor IT, exactly like you monitor application. But at that time, the data was not mature enough, I would say. But now, after 7 years, you see the huge success and growth of companies like Snowflake, of technology like BigQuery, and then the data became more and more mature. Now, this is the time that more customers and more companies understand the need to understand deeper their data. And this is how it becomes in move from a niche, like you mentioned, to something that is more common and understandable.
I love the analogy of the 5 whys. I've been using it personally, and I think it solves a lot of problems, helps you understand yourself better as well. Ariel, next question to you. Observability is an extremely crowded and very competitive space. And first of all, to think that you want to get into that space, create a differentiation, and then win, and you're clearly winning. How did you think about getting started and then disrupting the current space of observability? Any insights that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I wish I had a short answer that said that we sat and thought and we drew on the table and then we started and everything hit it off. So in actuality, when we started almost 7 years ago, we wanted to be some kind of, you know, another observability platform that works the same like others. And we went on for the first over 3 years, and things went not great. So the company wasn't selling, we didn't have any income, any customers, and the company was basically falling apart. And at some point, I was promoted to CEO. I was originally the product manager in the company, and my co-founder Yoni was promoted to CTO after the CEO and CTO just left, while the company was basically going bankrupt. And then what we've done with the about 6 months of runway that we had left is to recreate the product around a vision that is only now, 3.5 years later, really starting to manifest itself, of analyzing everything in stream. So we're not doing any analysis on the storage. That's the biggest differentiator that Coralogix has. So instead of having to store all the data and then run periodic queries and aggregations on storage, we do all the alerting, the aggregations, our algorithms, everything run in stream in real time, which makes our product a lot more efficient, much more reliant in terms of alerting and anomaly detection and visualizations, a lot faster, but also 70-80% lower cost than the closest competitor. So suddenly we came to the market with this offering of, you know, here's a product that works, does everything your product does, no dependency on the visualization layer, no dependency on syntax. It's faster, easier to use, better support, but it also going to cost you a fifth of whatever you were paying one of the bigger legacy players. And ever since, you know, things were hitting off really well, and we've, I think, 20x within those 3 years. And specifically, by the way, you know, in India, that's a whole different conversation, but we found the India engineering culture very acceptive of new technologies, and very open to really do a bake-off, a technology bake-off with no, you know, no prior assessment, you know, no prior assumptions, and just run a POC and decide on a better product. And this is how we got into, I think, most of India's tech giants in the past couple of years.
Interesting. And 1/5 of the cost. That definitely helps. Amazing. Next question to you, David. You have Intel Capital, Samsung Venture, SoftBank, all the best VCs in the world investing into Anodot. This would be a great learning for Indian SaaS companies. Like, how do you attract very strategic investors onto your cap table? Not only the VCs, but you know, Israel has a very strong culture of attracting strategic angels to come on board. Do you have any rationale how you go about it? You know, when you build your next company, what would be the you know, thing that you would do to make it more successful from an investing standpoint? Yeah,
it's a good question. I learned a lot in that journey. I will say a lot. Before Anodot, I was CTO. CTO is a different role, although sometimes CTO do not admit that, but it's a different role. And raising money is a totally different aspect of running a company, totally different way of thinking. What I learned, there are a few things that I learned during that journey. One is that the cover is not less important than the insight, okay? So you can have the great technology in the world, you can have the brilliant people, the brilliant engineer, but if your story and your presentation, even your graphic, everything should be sealed as one big kind of present, okay? Because you are selling not only the product, you're selling the company, you're selling the vision, you're selling the story, and all of that need to be very calculated in every step that you are doing, in every story that you say, in every move. And this is something that I learned with the time, because you know, we have a tendency in Israel to think that, okay, we have a great technology, we are the brilliant in the world, people will just drop on us money. So no, it's not the case. And a lot of it depends on how do you tell the story, how do you tell your vision, and it required, I would say, a lot of a conversation, a lot of training, and not to take it as for granted. So this is, I would say, one of the most important things that I learned. The second thing is, before you're raising money, you need to prepare all the field, all the particles that are before raising the money. Okay, what I mean by that is that if you are planning to raise money, prepare yourself at least a year before, and think with yourself, what are the KPIs that you need in order to make a good round? Okay, what is your CAC? What is your LTV? What is your growth rate? And assuming that you are achieving them, then you can go to make a decent round. And if not, if you are not achieving them, you have several paths. And one of the paths is to go to tier 2. It's okay to go to tier 2 because, you know, tier 1 will invest only on companies with a specific KPIs. And this is life, and you need to accept it. Of course, there are exceptions. Of course, you will see here and there someone that has a great record, and now people will put $100 million on zero ARR. Okay, it happens, but don't rely on that. Rely on the worst case.
No, super interesting. And Ariel, in your case, like, how much role have strategic angels played in the growth of the company? And do you choose them? You know, how do you go about that?
So that's an interesting question. I think the more the companies mature, the less of a critical role they play in the company. But there's one person that I should actually mention. I think Saket, you know him really well. That is a big part of the reason, along with a couple of our good VCs, big part of the reason the company still exists. Because when we were really struggling back then 4 years ago, one of our earlier investors was Moshe Lichtman. Moshe Lichtman is basically one of the first employees at Microsoft that later opened the Microsoft R&D Center in Israel. That is now, you know, a $10 billion business a year. And then he opened his own VC. But besides that, he invested us directly. And when the company was really on the verge of closing and the board was really thinking what to do and whether we should, you know, basically tear the company apart and close it, he sat on the board and said, listen, I've been in technology for 30 years. There's the first generation of monitoring, which is, you know, BMC and Nagios and all the old school tools. There's the second generation, which is Splunk and Elastic and others. And these guys with the streaming platform are the third generation. And maybe it'll take the market a while to understand, but it is the third generation and I believe in it. And then they agreed, and he was actually participating even more than when he invested in the beginning. He participated in a safe round to give the company a little bit of money and a little bit of runway. And that person believing in us and convincing the board and making sure that we are confident about our new path is a big part of the reason for our success, and a big part of the reason why we rejected an acquisition offer a few months after, when the company just started hitting off. So this is just a very good example of how, when you bring the right angel, and, you know, you see a lot of startups bringing celebrity angels. You know, you can bring whatever, LeBron James to invest in your startup, which is nice. But if you're an infrastructure company or a cyber company or a machine learning company, you're not going to get a lot of value for that. So really, you need to pick the right angel, the guy that or lady that understands your domain, your space, and have experience in it, and then they can bring a lot of value at the early stages of a company.
But Saket, as you can see from Ariel's story, by the way, I hear it the first time, amazing story. And we know Ariel and myself, we are almost like brother. I will tell you that it's all about people. this is how another proof that you took someone that was in product, understand technology, understand a vision, and completely change the future of a company. This is an amazing story.
Yeah, no, it is true. And I see a lot of startups getting lost in the whole friends and family round, where they want to give allocation to friends and family who would add no value but monetarily. And eventually they're not able to make the most of it. But this is really, really good insight. Um, Coming back to the next question, and actually to both of you, maybe David, I'll start with you. How do you crack the GTM? You know, one of the biggest things for SaaS is cracking the US market. You're based in Israel. So are you, Ariel. How do you even imagine getting into the US market, building a team? Um, and I've seen both types of Israeli founders. Some are based in Israel, they never moved to the US, like the Iron Source founders. It's a $10 billion company, and they've built a massive empire there. And some are founders who actually station themselves. So, any insights, learnings on that front would be amazing for the audience.
Okay, so there is no, like always, there is no only one answer. I will tell you, in my first startup, it was quite easy. There was a market. Okay, we only needed to be much better than the leader there, and we annoyed him quite well. And then he sued us and acquired us. Okay, so this was the story. We had an amazing technology there, much better, less cost, really a great product. In this one, I will say it was a bit craziest, because we started with we didn't really know where and what kind of vertical will get value from our products. And it was not easy. I can tell you it was not easy. At the beginning, we had a very nice success. We have even our second customer from the beginning, 7 years ago, is with us until now, so it's a good sign. But it was not easy, because you don't know where this technology can match. You don't know when the data will make the right evolution. And it took us time. It took us, I will say, around 3 years to have the right product market fit. But now, after almost 7 years in the company, I can tell you that if I need to think again about what we have done, I will be more focused on to find the product market fit and to drop away things that doesn't work immediately, faster. And then once you understand what is not working, because you cannot force something. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You remove all the noise, and then you look for the repetitive market, and you ask yourself, what is your ICP? What is your ideal customer profile? And then when you want to penetrate the US, I always say that there is a lot of impact on culture, a lot of impact. I even wrote a blog about it. I will tell you that I personally, I don't think that I can sell very well in the US, okay, personally. Why? Because my English is broken, because all kind of things. And then I was looking for the people with the US culture, to hire local person with the local knowledge on the domain. So this is on that part. And of course, a lot of marketing activity. Marketing is something that in Israel, we tend to, I will say, leave it for the end of the budget. Okay, we are left with budget, let's put on marketing. But on the contrary, in this company, I knew that marketing will be a key. So we put a lot of money. Sometimes you can think that we are wasting money, but the ROI is coming, and you need to have patience on that.
Yeah.
Because marketing, you don't see the effect immediately. There are amazing companies in the Israeli market that have done an amazing job in marketing, even much better than we have done. But I can tell you that this is something that you need to invest a lot if it is analysts and social network and advertisement, always and consistently. Without that, it is very difficult to penetrate the US.
Interesting. I can understand why India and Israel are similar here. We are more cost conscious. We think of
Exactly.
first and then cost. And this is a very
By the
unique.
way, this is why you see, for example, in India, what I saw is that the most successful company, Israeli company that success in India, are the one that find a way to be much more cost effective with their solution. If you take sport, I think also Coralogix is in that although that Coralogix is providing huge value beyond cost. By the way, we acquired Pileus with cloud cost, so maybe now we can success even more in India.
No, absolutely. Ariel, just a little, last point. I think David covered it beautifully. But one of the things on the GTM side I've noticed is the Israeli community. Right, the moment you land in Israel, you have all brothers and sisters who are super happy to help you. I feel lucky because I have Indian brothers and sisters and Israeli brothers and sisters in San Francisco. But how much of that really adds value to the growth of the company? From your experience?
Yeah, so just to add to what David said, and we also encounter, I agree with everything, and what we also encounter in the US is the importance of the economic buyer, not just the technical buyer. A lot of the time the decision is made in levels that are not the team that does the POC, and that buyer is not assessing the product technology, that buyer is not interacting with the company, and then the brand recognition and the level of hygiene around the organization, whether it's documentation, whether it's compliance, really comes into play. So that is something that we've learned about the US and how to satisfy the economic buyer with numbers and success criteria and very well-formed POCs. To your question, I think the Israeli community, one of the things so I'm currently at reInvent. We're sponsoring reInvent in Vegas, the AWS Summit. And we are here with the American and the Israeli team. And they are shocked how every time Israelis pass by the way, the attendance is insane. There are 1,000 people from Israel out of 20,000. That's 5%. Well, Israel in the world is, 1/100%. So the thing that they saw is that every time Israelis passed our booth and they would hear a couple words in Hebrew, they immediately turn, oh, it's Israelis. Let's hear what they have to say. And bring their American colleagues to hear what we have to say. There's a lot of aid that is being transferred between the paid forward approach in Israel is really strong. And it's a small country and everyone started in the army and everyone started in a few very big companies when they began their career. So you're always a couple of hops away from someone. So for instance, I'm currently in the US for the conference and later in San Francisco. So I wanted to meet two specific people to consult about US go-to-market and expansion. So I said, who's done it really well in Israel? And I wanted to meet Dan Adika, the founder of WalkMe, and I wanted to meet Shlomi Ben Chaim, the founder of JFrog. It took me less than 24 hours to have both meetings booked on the calendar, which is something that I think is very unique to Israel. The speed where you can get people to help and their willingness to help. By the way, that includes me many times sitting with people that are almost competitors of my company, sitting for coffee and consulting, because both are, we're both coming from a small company, a small industry, and it's easy for us to look at each other and say, you're not really my competitor. We're competing with the bigger players in the market, if we take business from another, occasionally it's not really changing the grand scheme of things, and the relationship and assistance and founder to founder aspect of things is much more important than that. So definitely helped us in many ways. There are even programs that do that. A lot of accelerators in Israel. There's a program in the Bay Area, for instance, called SV101 that is all meant to help Israeli founders enter the Bay Area with Israeli connections over there. So, which I think is something that will also come to India, because I did see a lot of, like you mentioned, your brothers and sisters in India, and Indians and Israelis basically run the Bay Area. So I think that'll be the next step for India Industries, to really have that base in the Bay Area powering startups now back in India.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I can personally vouch for this story because the first time I went to Israel, I'm an accountant and I didn't know anything about technology. And it was a 17 days trip, and I had 4 meetings booked. By the end of the 17th day, I had 100 meetings planned. And it was all people who thought that it will help my friend, let me make a connect. And that was a chain. That was very inspiring to see as a culture for me. Uh, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm so excited that both Anodot and Coralogix are penetrating the Indian market and helping our unicorns become decacorns, support them with all the scale. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out the time, and looking forward to seeing you guys in India.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to visiting India very soon.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Ariel.